Hi, everyone. Welcome to Ask the Planman. Everything you want to know about finance, insurance, and more, but we're afraid to ask. I'm your host, Bruce Weinstein, and today we're going to crack the code of whether to lease or not to lease. We're sitting down with Mark Minoogian, who's had several years' experience in the auto industry, grew up with his father having 40 years in the auto industry. Mark's a lover of music and today is now working in the life settlement investment business. Mark, welcome to Ask the Planman. Let's jump right into it. Why should people lease or should they not lease?
Oh man, Bruce, good to see you again. That's a loaded question, Bruce. I think leasing has both positives and negatives to both sides, right? Let me start with the positives. One, if you want the latest technology every 3 to 4 years, leasing might be your complete option. You want a new car, you get bored of your car pretty quickly, and you have, this income where you don't have to worry about, a certain payment structure, or you want to keep a payment structure around the same price every single year, and you just get bored of your vehicle. That's a great reason to lease. Another reason, your car is always going to be under warranty. If something breaks, don't worry about it. You'll bring it right to the dealership. They'll take care of it. You don't have to worry about out of cost benefits going to yourself. The dealership is going to out of pocket. Yeah, so dealership will take care of that. Something about leasing that probably isn't the greatest thing for you. One, the prices of cars these days are crazy, and lease numbers are actually a lot higher than what they used to be. I'll give you a great example. I have a 2014 BMW X1. And it's kind of a gas guzzler. Me being in the car industry, I've done a little bit of work to it. I've tuned it up, and I'm not getting the greatest gas mileage. So I thought to myself, you know what? It's time to get rid of it. The rumors that you hear of, you're going to get a lot more for your used car these days. Yes, that is true. So I was like, all right, perfect. I'll unload it. I want to get myself into a Honda Accord hybrid. If I can keep my payment somewhere around $400 to $500 a month, that would be amazing. I'll get rid of the car. I'll pocket a little bit of money for myself, leave a little bit of a down payment. So I went to the Honda dealership, right? First of all, couldn't even find a Honda Accord hybrid. Non-existent. Their waiting list was crazy.
Well, yeah, I would say order it and wait 6 or 9 months.
Exactly.
Right?
So when I went there, they, actually goes, well, where are you trying to be price-wise? I'm like, if I could stay between $400 and $500 a month, you have a deal. We'll write it up right now. He goes, Honda Accord hybrids are leasing for around $650 a month. You can't even get yourself into a Civic for around $400 a month. And 2010, when I used to work at a Honda dealership, Civics were leasing for like $169.
Sure.
So it's absolutely crazy.
So let's just jump in a little quick on some of this stuff. Let's break some of this down because the environment has changed with COVID. I want to make sure we kind of hit the current state of the auto market because it's influencing people and our listener on their insurance costs. People are kind of shocked with why their insurance rates have gone up. And so you and I met as I was car shopping earlier in the year, February, March. Our car finally died and I needed to replace it. And I'm a proponent. I like to buy, as you and I discussed, certified pre-owned vehicles, and we'll get into why. But inventory was ridiculous. You couldn't find anything. Nobody had used cars. You go to Lexus, they normally have 600 cars. They have 10. Came to see you at the Mercedes dealer. Again, you got to order cars. You got to wait 6 or 9 months. So what the phenomenon was going on is used cars 3 to 4 years old were selling at 90% of original sticker. Whereas normally the paradigm is that you get a 30 to 40% depreciation, sometimes 20 to 30%, as they say, right, as soon as you leave the lot, and then, 10, 20, 30% thereafter. So when everybody's used to paying maybe 60 cents on a dollar for a 3 or 4 year old car, now all of a sudden it's 90, even full sticker, because everybody was upping their prices. You could trade in your BMW for probably close to what you paid for it. But now at the same time is, well, what are you going to buy instead? And you're getting involved in a car of lesser price range, maybe lesser quality, not to knock Honda over BMWs, but it's not a sports car, right? And so because of the demand of hybrid gas prices, they just went bananas. And so here's the problem that I just heard you identify to me in a couple of things is you gave them a price. they came back to you with, well, you're never going to get it at that price. So they're already raising your expectations. You're going to need to pay more for this thing. But as a financial advisor, financial planner, and the plan man, what I want people to know is, well, what's going into that price? Where did they get $650? And is that relatively the right price for me to be considering leasing that car versus, well, what's the math on just buying it? And so I want to talk about the distinctions between buying and leasing and the pros and the cons so that people can decide for themselves based upon their circumstance. Should I keep leasing? Should I stop leasing? Should I buy new? Should I buy pre-owned? And so I want to break all that down with everybody. So your story's taking us there. Let's pick up. So you're at the Honda. They're telling you $650. You're gagging. You're like, well, wait a minute. I wasn't looking to spend that kind of money. So what happened next?
Yeah, definitely. So then it just hit me, like, first of all, my car is fully paid off. The only thing that I put into it is the routine maintenance and gas. So going from there, well, I don't really spend $650 a month on gas. So I'd much rather just keep the current car that I'm driving until, the markets kind of fluctuate itself and everything kind of balances itself out. There is always a trade-off on that too. The longer you keep your pre-owned vehicle, the less you're going to get on the trade value. But in my head, I couldn't justify spending this money that I would be going into a car payment. Plus, I'm putting gas into that car too. So my cost of owning that vehicle has just skyrocketed instead of just keeping my own vehicle that, might not be the most gas-friendly vehicle, but I'm still going to be less than where I was leasing the vehicle.
Understood. So again, let's just clarify it. So I was interpreting initially you had a payment on the BMW. You're now framing up saying, I don't have a payment anymore. I've owned the car outright. I'm now struggling with, do I want to pay $5 for a gallon of gasoline or six, depending, right? And so your contemplation was, let me move into a vehicle that might be more economic on the fuel standpoint, but I already own it. Now I got to take on a potential payment. Now, I guess there could be some equity in there. Maybe you could have sold the car for cash and applied it towards the purchase. But again, with depreciation and swapping out and waiting and the inflated prices for these hybrid cars, who knows, where the numbers would be. But the distinction I want to make sure people understand is you didn't have a payment. Now you're facing taking on a payment. And then it's a matter of where's the rationale of 300, 400, do I want to go to 600 when I was thinking 4 to 5?
Correct,
right?
Definitely. And for me, it just wasn't worth it, and no knock on the Honda brand or anything, but I can't justify spending $650 on a Honda Accord hybrid, which is not even the top tier, touring. It was just, normal EX sport. But still, for me, that was my deciding factor of, okay, I'd much rather keep putting the $450 a week in gas in my current car than jumping this price for a new payment plus the price of the gas that's going to be going into the vehicle because I commute quite a bit for my job. So that kind of deterred me right there from that. I just think right now, just the whole leasing market itself, I haven't seen a lot of people switching from leasing vehicles to now buying vehicles. And we were talking about earlier, especially certified pre-owned vehicles, just because the prices of new cars are inflated. Things are a little better now as far as dealer markup fees. But, when you were shopping for your vehicle, you and I toured the showroom at the Mercedes dealership and you saw, anywhere from 5,000 to, 60,000 above MSRP for certain cars. And I just can't, justify. And I would tell my customers, unless you are in a dire, I need this car right now, I would wait.
Yeah. No, it was stomach churning to go through it. We went to numerous dealerships. I'm looking online, just finding cars. The quality of the cars, the markup on the cars was very discouraging. Now that's the here and now. Now I'm a few years older than you, and I've got history, of buying cars going back into the 80s, and the paradigm shift of leasing came about. And this is where I see as a planner some of the pitfalls I hope we can address with people. And again, I got some scenarios. I took some notes to make sure we try and get to, but what I find to be problematic as a planner, a financial advisor, is in general, cars are a depreciating asset. We want our clients to have appreciating assets, and cars are never one of those categories. And so there was a book years ago called The Millionaire Next Door, and it talked about how the millionaire next door is very unassuming. He's not overspending, and they tend to buy that pre-owned used car. And so for me, the last 20 years or so, I would buy the high-end luxury vehicles, whether it's an S-Class Mercedes or a BMW convertible 6 Series. But I would always buy them certified pre-owned, 3 to 4 years old. And at the time, again, today it's varying and probably the paradigm will shift back a little bit to the norm. But you could pick up those cars for 60 cents on a dollar. Now, the trouble and where people have moved from is, and you said some of this earlier, so I want to capture that back, is people don't want the hassles of the maintenance. They don't want to have problems after it's out of warranty. These cars have gotten super expensive. And so we want to get rid of it every 3 years. And yes, I had a wandering eye and I wanted a new car every half hour, right? So we fight that emotion, which I think, the dealers know, at least from a dude standpoint, as most dudes want to have that shiny object, every other hour. But what I would look at, here's one scenario. I bought a 6 Series BMW convertible that retailed for probably 85 at the time, and I paid in the mid 50s. My payment was around 600 and change a month, and my buddy was leasing a brand new 3 Series convertible, and he was paying pretty much the same payment. And I said, look at the numbers. I'm driving a 6 Series. You're driving a 3 Series. They're both convertibles, but if you know the car, there's a significant difference of driving a 6 versus a 3, right? Exactly. But because he bought a $60,000 car, I bought a $60,000 car, except I bought it pre-owned 3 years. So what did I get? I got a car with 27,000 miles on it, but I'm driving a 6 Series. Now, after a few years and my taste changed, my desire, I was able to sell the car, got back more than half of what I paid for it. So now I look at it as, what was the use of my money for that period of time? And my payment and my total cost for that car for that 3-year window was way less than I ever could have leased it for or purchased it new. And therein lies the lesson of managing your dollars and your cash flow to your desires. And that's the push-pull. It's wants versus needs. So we want the nice car, but do I need the nice car? And then can I afford the nice car? So that was one scenario I had. You had some stories you wanted to share. So let me.
Well, yeah, let me just kind of piggyback off your story right there. Your buddy leased the car and you bought the car, but at the end of the day, too, you own a piece of matter at the end of the day. When your payments are all over, you own something. Where leasing, you're constantly going into your wallet month after month, year after year. I've had clients at Mercedes, who've been leasing cars for 15 years. Let's just say, at the end of the day, they don't have this piece of matter in their driveway that they can claim their own, which is an asset at the end of the day. Someone gets into a financial situation. Well, there you go. I have this, this 6 Series in my driveway that all the payments are taken care of. It's worth something. It's funny now, the way that the car market is shifted in the last year or so. If you had a lease, there was no way you can get out of your lease early without paying some kind of fee. In today's market, however, let me keep reminding the audience, the market is shifting. The cars are getting a little shifting back to how it used to be. But I've been seeing clients, a year, 2 years left on their lease, and they're going to the dealership, and the dealership is paying them to take those cars from them, which is, I think, pretty much the only time in history that's ever happened when it came out to be leasing. Another option you have in leasing, too, is, let's say your friend, he has that 3 Series, and at the end of his lease, he goes, you know what, Bruce, I really, really love this car. Well, you do have an option to buy the car after you lease it as well. So that could be another way that you could acquire the car. You're going to be paying more in the long run. If you have any inkling of, well, I'm going to lease it for 3 years to keep my payments lower and then I'll finance it after, I always recommend just finance it from the get-go, because you're going to be paying more over the 7 years that you're going to be having this vehicle.
Yeah. The tie-in I have, so my stepson was in the trap of leasing. He's 27 now. He graduated from FAU, Florida Atlantic, and got a car, and he's leasing that car. And I'm like, why are you leasing? And he's not my son; he's my stepson. He and his dad. That's a decision they made. I wasn't asked or inquired for the decision. And he bought a Lincoln. I mean, what 22-year-old buys a Lincoln? But he had a beautiful Lincoln, and he's driving virtually no miles. He overpaid the miles, meaning he put in for 10,000. Now he's only driving 3,000, 4,000. Now his lease is running out, and he's way below his miles. And I kept saying, try and sell the car yourself. Maybe you should buy the car out and keep it, because he prepaid. This is part of the leasing trap, folks, is they want to know how many miles you want to drive, and then they charge you extra for, well, I drive 15,000 miles. Well, that's going to depreciate the car faster, and we got to charge you more, and it's 50 cents for every mile over that. And, so people kind of lock into things. And then when COVID hits, well, now I'm not driving anymore, and I'm not using my miles. And so I prepaid all this miles that I didn't use. So he turns around and he goes out, he gets rid of the car, and he goes and leases a Honda. And it's a beautiful Honda Accord, and it's fully loaded, and it's a nice car. But here he is again. He's now into his second round of lease payments. And he's saving money, and he's done well. And he buys his first apartment. He buys a condo down here in Florida. And he's now concerned about his cash flow and his payments. What's the mortgage going to be? The building costs? So I got this car payment. So all of a sudden, the car payment became an albatross around his neck of like, oh, I got this payment for, a lease. And so when he finally sat down with me, I said, look, put a little bit less down on the condo. Let's pay off your car. Even though you leased it first, let's just get the buyout, get rid of that payment. Because he's able to put the payment and borrow the 20,000, let's say it was, to buy the car. He got a mortgage at 3% before rates jumped. So it was cheaper for him to finance the balance of the car, get rid of the payment, now put that payment into his 30-year mortgage at 3%. But what it did was it got him out of the trap of leasing. He has such low miles on it, that car could go 20 years. He doesn't have a wandering eye. He doesn't need to get a new car every 5 seconds. He drives to work and goes home. And so when he saw the financials behind it, it became a no-brain decision for him, and he was happy to get out of the trap of leasing. Leasing's a trap. Now, you said earlier that it has its place, and I agree it has its place. And one of the things we want to talk about for the business owner listener out there is if you're able to write your car lease off, and this is where the audience had grown into leasing, because it's a business expense, it's deductible, it's not an asset, you're not financing it, your accountant doesn't have all kinds of widgets and digits to figure out as far as depreciation, advanced depreciation, book value of the car. You lease it, it's a payment, it's an expense, you're done, and that's the end of it. And it's a pre-tax expense. So go ahead.
Yeah, what I was going to say is some manufacturers too, they will have incentives to, if you're, financing or leasing in your business name, you will get some kind of, manufacturer rebate, to help take down the cost of the car. So I always recommend, if you have a business, put the car in the business name. Like you said, it's a tax write-off at the end of the day. And certain businesses too, depending on how the business is structured, but it's called like gross vehicle weight. If a car is over a certain weight, you'll also get an additional tax benefit too. So I see a lot of people coming in and say, hey, I need to hit 6,000 pound gross vehicle weight, and I get an additional tax benefit off my write-off. So they'll go and they'll buy a larger vehicle, something that hits that requirement. So businesses do have good incentives of putting the cars in the business name, but especially when it comes for leasing too, because one, you're going to be paying less than financing on those leasing options. And it's a write-off too. So at the end of the day, you are going to be getting a little bit of that money back coming towards that business.
The scenario I had to share, my brother-in-law had an S-Class Mercedes around the same time that I was getting mine, and I fell in love with his car, which made me go look for one. So he was paying around $1,600 a month for his lease. It's a brand new, this is a number of years ago, but it was still a $100,000 vehicle. But it was through his business. So his $1,600 payment is a tax deduction in his business. He's not paying for it in pre-tax dollars, or sorry, in after-tax dollars, he's paying for it in pre-tax dollars. Conversely, if I were to go take on that payment and I can't write that off, I've got to make $2,500, pay my taxes to get the same $1,600 to pay for the car. So there's a huge gap between a pre-tax and a post-tax. So for me to go buy pre-owned, save the $40,000, get the car for $60,000, have $1,000 payment, at least it's more manageable on a gross tax basis versus because somebody couldn't write it off and get that deduction. So again, it's decisions you have to make. It's understanding the money and economics. And look, God bless for those who have all the money in the world that want to spend $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 for a car payment forever. But most people don't. And so we want to put them in a position to succeed, and why the pre-owned market might work for them, why financing might work for them. You hit something before. When you and I met, I was getting rid of my 19-year-old GMC Yukon with 170,000 miles. My wife and I have raised 3 boys. We've had 11 dogs. We rescued Great Danes. So we've had this massive people dog moving vehicle that gets, 6 gallons to the mile. And we were doing everything we could to keep it going and have it. We were in a point of not having payments, and that was nice. 19 years, the car has been paid off forever. It owed us nothing. And so to your point of your struggle getting rid of your gas guzzler, we're dealing with our gas guzzler. And I'm like, but it's free. I don't have to pay for anything. Now, it was starting to break down. We were having some fits and challenges with it and electrical issues. So it does get to a point where a car needs to get put down for people. But I don't think anybody out there listening is going to say 19 years they made a bad decision on owning that car. Now, I did buy that car new at the time. 2003. It was zero interest. GM was just offering the zero interest deals. And, we kind of shot the works and we got a vehicle. But I did it knowing I was keeping this car more than 5 years. And I could make the so what point to that for my listener is when the distinction I see between buying and leasing is at the end of 3 years, you've got no obligation when you lease. You're giving the car back. I'm not on the hook. I don't have to find a buyer. I don't have to go to Kelley Blue Book. I don't have to play the trade-in game. I'm just walking away from it. If the car lasts 15 more years, let the next person enjoy it. I'm getting a new shiny object. But when you buy, and let's say I bought new, and I wasn't committed and I wind up changing my mind, or the car doesn't fit my family style anymore, now I'm on the hook for getting rid of it. And that's where I think people don't enjoy that part of the car process, car ownership, buying, selling processes. Now they've got to be the seller. And they're going to get beat up, and who knows who's coming to their door, and they're running ads on, Craigslist, and then they go to the dealer to capitulate and say, hey, just take this off. And the dealer's going to give them the worst price in the world because it's a business. They're not your friend. It's a business. They're looking to make money. And so, go ahead.
Just because, we are in a new age of technology, owning a car these days, and especially the idea of getting rid of your car, I think personally has never been easier. Yes, I don't want to put the Craigslist ad out or the Facebook Marketplace. I don't want people coming to my home. However, we do have great services now like Carvana, where you just put your information about your vehicle. They'll give you a fair price of what it's worth, and a Carvana employee will come with a tow truck, pick it up, and write you a check. Or if you live close to a CarMax, it's unfortunate at my dealership that I used to work at, playing the dealership game with numbers, we would have someone come in, hey, all right, your car is worth 10,000. Well, CarMax down the street is giving me 15,000. And I would say, take it there, So there are certain facilities that are offering fair prices for their vehicles. So if I always say, if you're trying to get rid of your car, first place, go to CarMax, go to Carvana, just see what they're going. And then if you want to go to another market, go to the dealership you bought it just to see, because as a owner, you have every right to explore as many options as you want. Whoever's going to give you the best price for the vehicle, and then, okay, trade-in value is 15 or 17,000 if you sell it privately. Then you have to analyze yourself too. Well, is that $2,000 really worth the hassle of me posting the photos, strangers coming to my home? For me, the $2,000 could be a significant amount of money for people, but I'd much rather just you take it, give me a fair price. So we are in age where I think companies out there are giving a lot more fair prices on trade-ins. So the
Well, I think, like you said, is the market shifted. So the hunger and thirst for used cars created a stronger demand for CarMax, Carvana, your dealership, other dealerships, because they need inventory. And so come bring me your cars became a feasting. Now, as this economy and the recession and who knows where it's going, and now inventories build up and the shopper's not there and the free cheap money's not there, right? My car loan, the last car loan I took, was zero interest, and now all of a sudden I'm paying 5%. So that paradigm has shifted, just like the mortgage rates have doubled. Well, car rates have moved from basically zero for the last decade to real numbers again, 5 to 8% loans, depending on what you're getting. So that is going to have an impact. So I do think it'll stymie the used market as well. But the point behind it is the show is to educate. So we're stressing to everybody, know your options, be educated, understand the playing field, and then decide, well, how big is the gap? And Mark, you hit a great point. Let's drive to the audience. If I give my car to the dealer as part of a new purchase, I get a tax credit for the value of that trade-in. So all of a sudden, let's say Florida is 7%, I'm from New Jersey, was 6%. So if I have a $20,000 trade-in, I'm getting $1,200 to $1,400 relief in my tax. So now, did I really get 20,000 or did I get 21,000 for my car? Because now when I go somewhere else and they offer me 22 and I'm getting 21, well, now for the 1,000, do I want the headache, the hassle? So again, it's knowing the numbers, it's understanding the tax breaks and how that applies. Again, the do's and don'ts of leasing and financing for the show is, well, this is one nugget people may not even realize when they trade in, there is an offset.
Yeah, definitely. And you're not going to be getting that tax benefit when it comes to leasing as far as like trading it in, because the way it works, you're just not going to receive it on the leasing side. However, on the financing side, that's where you're going to experience that benefit of getting that tax tax deduction off the price. So let's say your taxes are $3,000, but you're getting back $1,000 on your tax cut. Well, right there, you're only paying $2,000 in taxes. So it kind of offsets the way, taking it to somewhere else. I always believe that if you're going to trade in a vehicle, trade it in at the place that you're going to go be purchasing your next vehicle, because that tax, no one really wants to be paying that much money to Uncle Sam. So the less you have to give to Uncle Sam, plus you are going to pick up a couple dollars on the back end of the deal as well.
Yeah. All right. We lost a deal which ultimately got us in front of you, and I had a private buyer and I had a price set from the private buyer, and I knew where my truck was going to be, and I figured, most dealers don't want a 19-year-old vehicle, but all right, here you go, tell me what it's worth. And they came within a reasonable amount of the offer, and then when you put the tax break in, I'm like, all right, it's probably not worth my driving all the way down there to do to do it, so let's do it. And of course we ran into some other snags with that particular dealership.
I remember that. I felt bad for you, Bruce.
Oh man, don't get me started. I'm not going to drop names on the show, but boy, oh boy, they lost a customer for life. That's all I'm going to say. The games that people play. So let's. I know you had some nuggets to. We're not trying to burn down the auto industry by any stretch, but we want people to be educated. So here's a quick story. My buddy, high school buddy, got out of the Marines, started selling cars in the late 80s and early 90s, and they would share with me. And this is when leasing was really becoming, the surge. Where the transition to leasing and. When you financed, and people got to remember, like I'm 59. So my car experience, mortgage experience comes out of the late 70s into the 80s when interest rates were stupid high. Mortgage rates were 15 and 18%. Car rates were 12%. So people were used to these big fat payments because the interest rates were so high on their financed cars. Now the cars might have been 3,000 or 4,000, eventually getting up to 10,000 and 12,000 back then. But when leasing came along, people were kind of getting confused, and I'll use the term preyed upon, where the $300 payment that you're used to financing doesn't correlate to the same value of the vehicle for $300 to lease it, because there's a residual that, the audience, the consumer wasn't trained or educated yet to be able to understand the differences. And so when Mark goes in there and says, I'm paying $300 for this car that I financed, and now I want to keep my payments for $300 for my lease, unbeknownst to Mark, they added $5,000 into the sticker price of that car because the leasing payment is not derived the same way and the transparency doesn't exist. So every time I go in, I know my numbers, what I want to pay for the car or what I'm paying for the car, and I can calculate it from a financing standpoint 6 ways to Sunday. But I can never figure out the leasing formats and all the hidden fees, costs, banking fees, residuals, money factor. That's the great one, the money factor.
Yeah,
right?
definitely. So let me get into that just really quick. So as an audience member, right, anytime you go to lease a car, always ask what the money factor is. And when you get that money factor, multiply it by 2,400, and that's going to give you your interest rate on the purchase itself.
Wait, I'm writing it down. Money factor
times 2,400.
24. That's the interest rate?
Yes, that will be your money factor.
All right.
That'll be your interest rate on
Beautiful.
the purchase, right?
Okay.
And just, I don't mean to go off topic, but just like educating, because this is an educational show. One of the biggest thing is when you're at the desk with the salesman, make sure that the price that you see when you're signing at the desk is going to be the same price before you go into the back office with the finance managers. Make sure that, always ask, hey, is maintenance included in this lease? There's so many questions that you have to ask because the guys in the back are like snakes. They're going to try to nickel and dime you for everything that you have. I'm sure you know that, Bruce. You've been buying cars for a long time.
Oh, you need gap insurance. You need undercoating. You need, How about the warranty on the tires?
Yeah. So always try to negotiate all those things going into it to make sure that when you're sitting at the desk signing paperwork with the salesman, that all those warranties are included in that price that you're, buying the vehicle for. Yeah, sorry to go off topic there. I was just saying.
No. This is spot. No, it's spot on. So, again, this is another one of these gets my goat when I go in there and try and dance the dance with the masters. Right? They know the game. I don't. They know the software. I don't. And I sit there as a consumer. And I don't consider myself to be the smartest guy in the room, but I certainly have a good sense of things. And it makes me scratch my head going, what's happening here? And so the last time I leased, the games that went back and forth, and I was ready to walk. And if you're prepared to walk from a deal, then you have the upper hand at most of these dealerships. It's the emotional side. I'm great negotiating for you. I'm not as good negotiating for me because I've got emotional investment in getting that car. I love the color. I love this. I want that. Like there's that investment emotionally. So I'll go in and negotiate for you, my wife, anybody out there. I could walk away. It's not my car. I don't have that emotion. And you need that when you're negotiating sometimes. So I had a price. I was very firm on my price. And the finance guy, who's the second tier now, he's trying to hammer in, you got to have this, you got to do this, we got to be over here, and it's this price. And I'm like, no, I can't do it. So that's okay. I'm happy to leave. Well, guess what he starts doing? He's playing with the residual. He's playing with the money factor. He's doing so the numbers outside weren't really the numbers. The guy on the inside can manipulate those numbers to try and make that deal happen. So the residual is not the residual when they don't want it to be the residual. The money factor is not the money factor when they need it to be a different money factor. And then it's like, well, suddenly we're going to go to this bank instead. And so, again, people just don't understand there's so many layers of this onion of where a dealership can make money that you as a consumer aren't aware of. Look, I'll say point blank, I came in with my own financing and I was not being offered cars to buy because they were not going to get the financing and they were not going to make additional money on the financing. And because I had my own deal in hand and it was better than their rates, my credit union pre-approved me, just like a mortgage contingency. I was pre-approved. And everybody I went to started playing games with, well, this, that, the other thing, and this is the rate, and that's the rate. I'm like, no, I got a rate. Here you go. Oh, well, you can't have the car. What do you mean I can't have the car? And then the games would start being played, and it was infuriating, and it was, frustrating as heck to try and find a car.
Yeah, a lot of dealerships are now getting hip to this. I never heard of this when I was in upstate New York at Ford, but when I came down to South Florida, no outside the state of Florida credit unions I was working a deal in Tampa, and the finance manager just out of thin air pulled this one on me. Oh yeah, we don't accept any credit unions outside of Palm Beach and Broward County. I'm like, where did that come in? Because as a salesman, we're just trying to make the deal. I mean, if a customer in Tampa is getting a 2% interest rate, I'm advocating for the customer. That's wonderful. But you know how the business goes in the car business. They're gonna try to get every cent into that car business.
Yeah. Well, and look, I get it. If their margins are lean, they're giving the cars away. A lot of them say it's not the car sale, it's the service, it's the back end of it, it's getting the repeat business and the referrals. But I'm sorry, if you're selling a $50,000 or $100,000 car, cry me a river if you're not making money on it. Like, I just don't want to believe or can't believe you're not making a penny on a $100,000 car sale. So the fact that you've got to now go make financing money, you got to make warranty money, you got to make the service. These cars are a fortune to service at the dealer. Nobody wants to pay the dealer prices. They're twice as much as a normal mechanic might be. And so you just run into these pitfalls. And again, there's a segment of the world that certainly can afford it and never bat an eye. But the masses, they got to watch their wallet, and that's why we're here.
Yeah, I will say this, just a quick little note, in the dealership world, the sales department just makes enough money to keep the lights on and pay the staff. But the service department is really where the majority of the dealership makes its money from. If you look at the margins on a car sale, let's say, Joe Schmo's makeup down the store, it costs them 10 cents to make the makeup, but they're selling it for $5. Well, $100,000 car, our invoice is probably only like, 93, 94,000. And there's only that much little play that, comes to the sales side of things. And back when things were, a couple of years ago, you're not going to be buying a $100,000 car at MSRP. You're going to, get it down definitely pretty significantly. So the majority of the money is where the service department kind of, picks up the slack for the dealership.
Here's the tell, Mark. Here's the tell. Tell is a poker, right? You got to read the room. You know the table. If you don't know who the sucker is at the table, it's probably you. So here's the tell from the car dealerships, and it ties to the casinos when people say, "Oh, I can win at the casinos. I got a system." And the running joke used to be, look at their house and look at your house. Right? The casinos have these massive, gorgeous, go to Vegas and see one massive casino operation after the other. And then look at your house. They're making billions. You're not. Why are they making it? Because the odds are in their favor. So the tell on the auto side is look at the gorgeous service centers that have popped up the last decade where you can shoot pool and you've got a concierge woman there who's going to help you book your flights, and we're going to give you a hot meal, and you'll come in and spend the day in our, free Wi-Fi air conditioned service area, plenty of TVs, headphones, like they want you sitting there all day, right? Well, there's the tell. How do you think you're paying for all of that? For them to invest the millions of dollars it takes to build those service facilities, they're not on ground anymore. There's a whole nother location for it. You don't go to the dealer for sales and block up and clog the community of volume of people. You're going to service over here. You're not even going to the dealership anymore. And so how'd that money get generated, right? Why would they invest that kind of money if they're not making money from it? So there's your tell. There's your tell.
Yeah, not that I'm saying going to the dealer is necessarily a bad thing for service. It's good. You take it to the manufacturer. If anything happens, the manufacturer is, going to cover those things that a technician might have broken. But explore your options. Let's talk about, German cars. There are so many German car manufacturer specialists out there who are independent shops that do great work, who specialize in German cars. Let's talk about Honda and Toyota. There's special places you can go to bring just Japanese cars, that they're technicians that only work on Japanese cars. So definitely, explore all your options before, I'm going to only bring it to the dealer and pay, let's say, $600 for an oil change on an E-Class Mercedes. It doesn't make any sense.
And don't be afraid to ask. I want an estimate before you're doing the work. I took my truck in. My mechanic, who was servicing my truck for all these years, was struggling to actually get to the problem. And so I took it to the GM dealer figuring it's their product, that maybe they have some different tools or diagnostic equipment, whatever it was. Now, I didn't ask the question. And when I got there, they gave me a litany of things needed, and it was thousands and thousands of dollars for what they deemed to be necessary for the car, which was just off the charts, like $5,000 for a truck worth, $2,000-$3,000 at best. And so I'm balking at it, and I'm not putting that kind of money in a car. And I'm like, well, forget it. Well, guess what? They charged me $200 to diagnose the problem. Now, they didn't disclose that to me when I brought the car in. They didn't say, oh, by the way, when you're making this appointment, if you don't do the business with us, we're charging you $200. Because guess what? I probably wouldn't have brought the car to them if I knew I'm paying $200 for them just to look at it. But shame on me, I didn't ask.
Yeah, always, always, always ask. They're always going to try to, always try to rip you off in certain ways. Same thing. I brought my girlfriend's car to Volvo, and she said the same exact thing. Before we even look at it, we have a diagnostic fee. I was like, diagnostic fee? Like, I've never heard of that. It's a part of the technician's job is to look over the vehicle and see what's wrong with it.
Time is money, and again, I don't mind if it's disclosed to me ahead of time. But again, buyer beware if you're not asking and they're not telling, and all of a sudden there's the bill, and you're like, well, wait a minute, you didn't tell me that. Well, now what are you gonna do? They're not gonna give you the keys. You can't get your car, and you're gonna have to pay it. And guess what? I'll never go back. I mean, so when I started as a financial advisor, the first lesson my dad gave me was, you can cut a person's hair many times, you can only scalp them once. You give somebody a bad experience, they're never going to come back. Now, I might give people the greatest experience in the world, and you'll never refer me, and that's fine. But I don't want you bad-mouthing me. I don't want you telling everybody not to do business with me. You have a right not to refer anybody to me. But guess what? That Cadillac dealer, I will never do business with. They have other operations. You know who it is. We're not going to use the name. They have other dealerships in the area, and I will never set foot in any one of their locations because of that experience. Now,
and you know what? It's when I met you, I was deeply upset, because I took my job very seriously. And the thing that I got to understand with other salesmen out there is we all sell the same product. A Cadillac in, Los Angeles and a Cadillac in Florida, they're going to drive exactly the same. But what really separates excellent service from one another is the way that the customer is treated, right? So for you, that salesman who you dealt with, he will not have a customer because of that experience. He did something incorrect, wasted your time, and it just left a horrible impression. So for me, it got me upset because like, why, as a salesman, why would you be wasting a customer's time like that?
So in fairness, let's not throw the salesman under the bus, because you and I are in sales, and so I empathize with the salesperson, and I enjoy just like getting to know you, the personal side of things. It wasn't them, it was the finance people. He and I had a deal. We went back and forth. He was putting the new plates on he was transferring my truck plates to the new car, and the finance people started playing games. And then when I told them, they basically were going to match the rate I had from the credit union. And I'm like, fine, then you could have the business. I don't need to deal with the credit union. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, we couldn't get you that rate. It's this rate. And I'm like, well, I'm not paying that rate. Well, if you want the car, you got to take that rate. And I'm like, I'll get a check from the credit union. I'll buy the car. Well, we can't hold it for you and da-da-da and this and that. And, they played all kinds of games. And I was basically losing the car. And the salesman's like, what's going on? He saw me walking out. I'm like, put my plate back on the truck. I'm not taking the car. And he was dumbfounded. So in fairness, it wasn't the salesperson.
Sorry, I thought it was another.
No, it's okay. You don't know. You weren't there. But I agree with you 100% is I don't go wasting people's time. I do a lot of my homework. I was talking to this guy online for weeks before I set foot in the dealership because I'm busy. I don't have time to play games. I'm narrowing down the cars. I want to see the car. I tell them the situation. I got my credit union stuff. What are your rates? Da-da-da-da-da. Here's my credit. Tell me where we're going to be. Oh, your credit's great. You're going to be here. We can give you this, this, and this, and that, and that. Come on down, check out the car. And I got to drag my wife in, who hates this more than going to the dentist. Sorry, Nick. And, and now, and we decide on the car. We sit down. We're working it out. We get the numbers where everything wants to be. I'm comfortable. I'll shake hands, come back. I'll get the title to the truck. I'll come back. And then the finance guy got involved, and he's just mucking up the whole deal. And he's playing games. And I walked out. Like, you're not hijacking me for a higher rate. And so the point behind it is, because I had private financing, they were balking because they're short cars. They want to make as much money with limited inventory as they can make. And if they were going to make $500 or $1,000 selling it through a bank and getting some kickback from the bank, if I'm financing $40,000 and they get 1%, well, that's another $400 of profit for them that I was denying them. And if they only have 6 cars to sell, they got to maximize it. And so it became my problem. And this was what was very frustrating.
So just really quick, I'd like to touch upon this too, just as an educational point, because we're talking about rate, right? And especially in a financing situation, what the rate that you see when you sign the papers with a salesman. So let's just say your rate is 6% for, let's say, 60 months. You have to know going into it that the finance side of things are holding rate back from you. So your buy rate might actually be 4%, right? This is a big thing in the car industry. This is how the majority of the financing side makes money. Now, you're saying, well, why would they do that? So when you walk into the office and they go, hey, Bruce, so how about this idea? Because I can give you a warranty and your payment will be exactly the same. Well, how would you do that? So they'll go, we'll just take you from your 60 months. I'm going to bring you to 72 months. Instead of that 6% interest rate, what about I give you a 4.75% interest rate and your payment's going to be roughly the same? Well, that looks really good, doesn't it? Little does the consumer know, well, hey, you just bought this $4,000 warranty package and you had no idea, that the dealership's making that. Do you really need? So I'll take this piece of advice really quick. This is actually what my finance manager told me, and I hope all your people listening do this too. When you go to the car dealership, you're going to bring $200 with you. You're going to say, whatever, 6% rate, that's fine. When you get into that office, right, you're going to show the finance manager a $100 bill, because finance manager needs to eat too. He goes, I'm going to give you this $100 bill. You're going to turn that computer screen around. I want to look at the buy rate. And he goes, now this other $100 bills, you're going to give me that buy rate. I just thought it was kind of a funny story, but I might do that next time I buy a car. Here, you have to eat too.
You can save thousands of dollars,
yeah,
right?
Of course. But make sure you always don't be afraid to ask, hey, what is the buy rate? What's the buy rate that the bank is giving you? Because I don't want you holding 2 points on me, because then that's all this money that you're paying out of your own pocket.
I'm writing that down too, the buy rate.
Yeah.
So I finally figured out after almost 40 years, 35 years, how the money factor works. And now you're educating us on the buy rate.
Yeah, that's the finance department makes a lot of money off that buy rate.
Well, that's, again, the point of this is to know the numbers. Look, they don't like cash buyers. Somebody comes in who's got money and they're like, hey, give me that $100,000 car. They're like, crap, we can't make more money on this guy. He's, it's the worst whale coming in is a guy who's going to pay cash.
Yeah, definitely.
Because you'd think it'd be an easier deal and write it up, but no, the money's made in financing.
Yes,
people tell you
100%.
otherwise. So.
Yeah, you're right.
Any other war stories? Any other war stories to share with my listener?
I don't like to, obviously the car industry does have its bad things, but it does have its good things as well. My number one thing for all your, people listening and all my previous clients is I hope you have a great experience. I hope you're treated right. And at the end of the day, I hope you really love what you just bought. That's kind of my main 3 things when it comes into it. But now with this podcast, ask every question that you can think of. Tell the dealership you want full disclosure. You want to know the money factor. You want to know your buy rate when you're financing, because that's huge. The dealership is going to look to take advantage of every single dollar coming out of your pocket, but it's your hard-earned money. And I want you to keep that money in your own pocket, but I also want to make sure that you're getting into a vehicle that you love to get into every single day. That's my biggest thing, coming from the sales side. These days, if you can get the car at MSRP, I don't really think, unless you're buying some crazy exotic, but, any market adjustment on vehicles, that should be negotiated out of the deal in the first 30 seconds. It's just ridiculous to be paying over MSRP for something.
That and that bank fee drives me nuts.
Yeah,
the delivery fee.
Yes,
right.
definitely.
There's $1,000 in this thing. For what? For what? Oh, we just have a documentation, or we have a delivery fee. just spreading it out
Yeah,
and
it's
chopping
just
it
like
up.
if
But
you recently I went on Ticketmaster. I just bought tickets to a concert, and just the list of fees, I was just laughing so hard. Some of those fees, depending if it's a private dealership over like a corporation, you can negotiate on some of those fees, especially if it's a mom and pop dealership. That will be negotiable. The larger corporation dealerships, they won't be negotiable. If they remove the documentation fee for you, that means they have to remove it for every single person because it's all public record of all their stuff. So just know that going into it, that some dealerships, some of the things are non-negotiable. A lot of the car dealerships these days, especially on used cars, it's going to be a one price store. There's going to be no negotiation. They're going to try to pick the best price for the consumer and the dealership. Going to stick to that price. They're not going to waft off that price. So the car industry has been changing too, only to favor the consumer, but also still help the dealership out. So you got to know these things going into it. You have
everybody's allowed to make some money, but as you're describing, the experience needs to be better. And so a lot of what they're doing to make it that haggle-free environment is going to let my wife someday without me walk in there if she ever needed to and not feel threatened. And I think people have gotten threatened. They felt abused, mistreated, a lot of distrust, right? We're in sales. People want to work with people they know, like, and trust. So getting to know the salesperson, do I like him? Yeah, I like Mark. We hit it off right away. Do I trust him? Yeah, I'm trusting him. Do I want to do business with him? Yeah, I'd love to find, if I could make a deal, I'd love to give him my business, right? So, and then I want to come back. And if I'm still in the market for that brand, I'll always use that person over and over again. So, a BMW dealer down here, we bought 3 cars from him over the years. My son bought a car. I bought, he became the guy. Like, we loved BMW. We're going to keep going back to Frank. And so, now Frank left the area with COVID and I lost that contact. But you know how it goes. The experience has shifted. So again, we want people to be educated. The do's and don'ts of car financing versus leasing, to lease or not to lease. You got to make your own decisions. You got to look at your wallet. We hope that we've been able to give you some value and tidbits to reassess when you walk into the next time, showroom, online, whatever it is that you're looking for a new vehicle or used vehicle. Maybe you follow my guidance and look for pre-owned, certified pre-owned, save a few dollars that way. But whatever it is, we hope that we brought you some education. So I'd like to thank my guest, Mark Minoogian, today. Thank you so much for sharing some of the hidden secrets.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Bruce.
My pleasure. Please, folks, our contact info is below. Please like, subscribe, share the podcast to anybody out there that's in the car markets. Help educate them on the do's and don'ts of leasing and financing. We'd love to hear from you. Send us your questions to Bruce at asktheplanman.com. Visit our website, www.asktheplanman.com. Call our toll-free number, 1-844-PLANMAN. Remember, you like that, right? Thanks for listening today. Thanks again to my guest, Mark Minoogian. Remember, folks, when you need some advice, always get it right. Come ask the Plan Man. We'll see you next time. Mark, again, thank you so much for being with me today. It was a pleasure.
When you need some advice, never say